Welcome to our Lumos podcast. My name is Iris Medina, and I'm happy to introduce today's guest who just released a new book, Bankable Business Plan for Nonprofits, Dr. Edward G. Rogoff, a professor and former dean of the LIU Brooklyn School of Business. Before that, he was the Lawrence Enfield Professor of Entrepreneurship and Chair of the Department of Management at Baruch College in New York. He received a BA, MBA, MA, and PhD from Columbia University, where he wrote his thesis under the supervision of Nobel laureate William Vickery. Congratulations on your new book, Professor. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Please tell us about yourself and what inspired you to become an educator and a writer.
I became, when I graduated from school, I started a business, and I was in the broadcasting business for almost 10 years, and which was, fun, and I enjoyed it and all that. And then we sold the business, and I was thinking, well, I've never taught, and I thought, well, I have this PhD, I've never taught. And so I called a former professor of mine from Columbia, who was the chair of the management department at Baruch, and I asked him if he ever had a need for somebody to teach, and he said, oh boy, good timing, someone just quit, you can teach 3 courses. And 2 weeks later, I was at Baruch College teaching 3 courses. And loved it. I loved the students. I loved the stimulation of the classroom and the challenge of it. And I said, why didn't I do this before? Anyway, I ended up staying at Baruch for 20 years before I moved to LIU, and started an entrepreneurship program there. And I saw how important entrepreneurship was to so many students. It's also, as many people know, vitally important to the economy. This is how growth gets created, is through the building of new businesses. This is how people who move to the United States build their foothold here as they start businesses. So it's extremely important. And we started this entrepreneurship program at Baruch, and by the time we were finished, there were more than 1,000 students taking courses in entrepreneurship, and it was one of the top 10 rated programs in the US. And so in the process of doing that, I would also have a number of people say to me, do you have anything for nonprofits? Which we didn't. And it, stuck with me. I've been involved with nonprofits personally for many years, largely in health-related charities. And I had written a book on writing business plans for businesses. And a number of people said to me, is there a similar book for nonprofits? Which there isn't. And so it motivated me to work on this. And then, actually a little bit with the help of the COVID shutdown, I said, I'm going to finish this book. And so I finished this book, Bankable Business Plans for Nonprofits. And, for example, in New York City, 1 in 8 organizations is a nonprofit. So, you think about all the organizations, health charities, just the beginning, education institutions, arts organizations, many organizations are nonprofits. And they don't really tend to focus so much on the financial aspects of it, which are equally important to them as they are to businesses. And so focusing on creating a plan, creating a strategy, understanding the finances is the focus of the book, to help them raise money, to help them generate earned income. So that was sort of the motivation, for this. And, I'm happy after a number of years to really get it finished and to, now get it out there. And it turns out that this is a particularly important time for nonprofits. They're struggling, as many people and many organizations are, in the shadow of the COVID epidemic. they've lost revenue, they've lost donors. Many of them have had to engage in layoffs. And so this is a time many of them need to rethink their strategy and come up with a plan for moving forward. And I think this book can help them.
That's great. That's a whole lot. You went from broadcasting to teaching to developing an entire program to writing. So you have a lot that you've completed and done. And so who is this book intended for? Who's the audience that we're looking to target?
Yeah, so it's really two groups. So one is people who have a dream of starting an organization that they think of as a nonprofit. So, and I've met many of these people. So for example, I had a student who had a special needs child, and this child needed special tools, I don't know, educational assistance tools. And she couldn't find them. And she said, why doesn't somebody make this? The child had to sometimes use a wheelchair. And she said, she hangs her backpack on the back of the wheelchair and she can't get to it. She's had her phone stolen twice out of her backpack. And, she said, why doesn't somebody make something that attaches to the wheel of the wheelchair that the person in the wheelchair can easily reach? And she had like a half a dozen really good ideas like this. And she said, why doesn't somebody start a business or a nonprofit to do this? So this woman, Lisa, is a perfect example of somebody who needed a book like this. Where do you start? Who's the market for it? How are you going to reach them? What are you going to sell? Where are you going to get funding for? Issues of where you're going to get funding for a nonprofit are very different from where you get funding for a profit-making business. So I'd say the first market is people who have dreams, who want to start something, who don't know where to begin. And this takes them through that process. So at the end of it, they have a business plan, they can create a cool slide deck, they can show it to people, and they can get the resources they need to build their organization. And I've seen it many times, including this woman, Lisa, who's built a very sizable organization now. So anyway, so that's market number one. Market number two is people with established nonprofits who need to reevaluate where they are. They need to pivot. They need to have a new plan. They need to generate new revenue sources. Maybe they need to generate earned income to support their nonprofit organization. And they need to have a sort of a business focus and using business tools in figuring out how to do this. And I'll give an example. It's a very successful example of this, and there are many examples of this. But for many years, I was and still am involved with the Hemophilia Association of New York. So hemophilia is a disease where people's blood doesn't clot properly, and this organization supported these people, existed for 70 years, and it was struggling. The demands to serve the needs of this population were great. The drugs are extremely expensive. People don't have insurance. HIV hit this population incredibly hard. And so they really needed to generate a new source of revenue. Long story short, we created a side venture to basically purchase and sell the drugs that these patients need to treat their hemophilia. And these drugs, it's not unusual for a patient to have $1 million a year in bills for these drugs. Most don't. Most have just like a small amount, like $50,000 or $100,000 a year, which is of course still a huge amount of money. And insurance often pays, but doesn't always pay. Anyway, long story short, we created this side venture. We partnered with the hospitals, and this venture has now existed for almost 20 years. It does $100 million a year in revenue by selling these drugs, and it supports the treatment of these patients in the hospitals and through the association. So this is what I would call an earned income initiative. This required a business plan to do. Who's going to set it up? You know, who's going to manage it? Where does the funding come from? How does the money get handled? Anyway, so, you know, and you see it with so many institutions today. So the Metropolitan Opera, which is a, you know, huge institution, existed for well over 100 years. All their revenue was cut off by, they can't have performances. So their, you know, their revenue comes from raising money, from selling tickets. So now they've started, you know, they had put their toe in the water with this earlier, of streaming their recordings of operas that they've videoed over the years. So now they have a streaming service. They sell this for $15 a month. They've gotten a couple $100,000 in subscribers. And this, you know, will make a big difference in supporting them until they can begin to run performances again. So, you know, many, you know, examples of this. I mean, a great example of this, Iris, is the Girl Scouts. You know, the Girl Scouts exist to train girls, give them fellowship, you know, expose them to the bigger world, to the outdoors, you know, various missions. And along the way, somebody started using their Girl Scout troop to sell cookies. And the cookies turned out to be a big seller. You know, who's going to turn down, you know, a cute little 8-year-old girl who comes to your door and says, you know, would you like to buy cookies? Right. And so they got started with this maybe 30 years ago. And today they do hundreds of millions of dollars in cookie sales. And it's a major source of revenue. This, what does it exactly have to do with Girl Scouts? Well, you know, I guess it gets them out there and selling and servicing customers. I guess they get a little entrepreneurship lesson. But the point is, this became an earned income driver for them and their organization. And of course, you know, many people involved with churches that have, dinners or have barbecues or have, you know, sales of, you know, do like a big, you know, a big, you know, I don't know what you call it, where, you know, people donate stuff and then, you know, it gets sold and the church gets the revenue. So, you know, you have that, you know, that old dining room set that you didn't want anymore that was sitting in your garage, you give it to the church, you know, they have a giant garage sale and then, you know, the church makes the money from it. You know, these become significant sources of revenue to nonprofits. And so this book has that target in mind as well. So, you know, we're the steering committee of a church. We need to create an earned income initiative. We know our community. We have a lot of connections with people. We're willing to volunteer. Well, they need to create a plan. And this book is written with them in mind, with people with health charities that need to find alternative means of support as well. So that's sort of my dual market for this book.
Wow. So within the nonprofits, what are some other ways or some other people or entrepreneurs that are looking to start up a business that can really benefit from the strategic planning that your book provides them with?
Yeah, so I really think that every nonprofit should regularly engage in a strategic planning process. You know, I've been involved with nonprofit boards. I've seen nonprofit boards. Many of them, if the organization seems okay, you know, if it's not losing money, if the staff seems happy, there, then the board is happy, and that's good enough. Well, for most organizations, good enough is not good enough. The world is changing. They need to see their organization in the context of this changing world, and they need to be on a regular basis reevaluating where they are and going through a strategic planning process. This is a book that has a methodology to, in an organized way, go through a strategic planning process to say, here's what we're doing now, here are our strengths and weaknesses, here are what the opportunities are, here are what the needs are, and here are our options for doing a better job of what we're doing, for becoming more sustainable, being less subject to, you know, the vicissitudes of the world, for generating more income. You know, so it's just an important thing to do. Push comes to shove, many organizations will stay the same way they are year after year, but many of them really need to adapt, and they need to change, and they need to have a structured planning process to do that. There is no other book or program out there that does this, just focused on nonprofits.
That's really amazing. Um, what categories of the nonprofits can benefit from this?
Yeah, I think pretty much all of them can. I think really the giant nonprofits. So, you know, Harvard University is a nonprofit. You know, the University of Ohio is a nonprofit. You know, these are giant institutions with billions in revenue and staff of thousands of people. This is not who this book is written for. It's not written for somebody, say, at the, you know, the Red Cross, or I don't know, you know, AARP. Those institutions, you know, they have huge staffs. They basically run as businesses. They basically, I mean, AARP is a business. The foundation is a very small piece of what they do. You know, most of what they do is sell insurance, and then they have a foundation that's a little piece of what they do. The Red Cross, also a giant institution. You know, they basically work under government grants, which are long-term. They collect and sell blood. That's basically a business for them. And this book is not thinking about those kinds of institutions. It's thinking about smaller, more focused, that are heavily dependent on volunteers, where you have a leader who has ambitions to grow it and can use the tools in the book to create a plan for growth. So that's, you know, that's who I'm, you know, that's who I was, you know, thinking of. You know, we'll leave Harvard and the Red Cross to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I think they can. I think they do pretty well.
I think so.
Where did you get the idea of your book?
So I really got it from a student who asked me the question. That's it. I mean, it was just like,
Oh,
someone, this student asked me, he said, is there something like this for nonprofits? And I went, oh, wait a minute. No, there isn't. And I thought, you know, there's a need for this. And, you know, it's interesting. You know, there are courses on nonprofits. There are programs on nonprofit management. And I would say one area where they sort of come up short generally is in not focusing on the financial aspects of the organization. You know, they tend to focus on the mission, the policy, the organization structure, but not so much on the financial issues. In the final analysis, the financial issues will dictate where you're going.
yeah.
And so this book introduces those folks to these tools, encourages them to use them, shows them how to use them, and they end up with something that's a financially viable plan. Um, and I think part of the reason, people get attracted to nonprofits because they love the missions, they love the idea of serving others, and I have no argument with that whatsoever. That's beautiful. It's fantastic. But it doesn't end there. It has to go like, okay, if you're going to do this, you need to have a revenue model. You need to have a financial model. Incredible organizations like, God's Love We Deliver, which, serves food to shut-ins and to people who are sick, and has I don't know, tens of thousands of meals that they do every day. Um, is a fantastic organization. Got started because they raised money from the AIDS community to serve people who were shut in at home because they had HIV. And then it's greatly expanded from that. Now it has government contracts from other large nonprofits. And it has a sustainable model for, going forward. It started with gifts from some individuals who wanted to help that population, and it's grown beyond that. And so they were cognizant of the financial issues that they had to deal with, and they've done that, and they've built a long-term sustainable model for this organization. So anyway, yeah, but anyway, it all started with that one question, is there a book like this for nonprofits? Wow, there isn't, there should be.
Good idea.
Right, good idea. I'm going to take it.
So you specifically wrote the book for nonprofits. What are their unique challenges in your mind?
Yeah, really, money is the challenge. It's really, it's really a challenge. Raising money is very difficult. So if you're a philanthropist, if you're a foundation that gives away money, if you're, a rich person who occasionally is generous with your money, you have thousands and thousands of good options. There's so many things you could give money to. Why are you going to give money to my charity or to your charity? So I think it's a great challenge is to raising money. So you need to connect with people. You need to make them see the value of what you're offering and how important it is and how they want to be connected to your mission. I raised money for the schools I've been at, and I always found it became easy when you brought a potential donor into a class and they met your students and they saw how fantastic these people were, how they were motivated to be successful in life, what their challenges were, how they worked during the day and they went to school at night, and then on the weekend they, had to take one of their grandparents to the doctor, and, they lived at home with, 3 generations of their family. And and so then as a potential donor, you understand the value that your gift will deliver to these people, and you can feel good about that. So I think, raising money and having potential donors of any kind see the value of what you do is a huge challenge. Most, the American Cancer Society or the Alzheimer's Foundation, they largely raise money from people who have had direct connection to these diseases. Either, they have a family member who has it, they see the difficulty it creates for a family and for this person who has the disease. And so then they, they give money. But they should also reach out beyond that. And this, book talks about ways, to do that and to tap into other sources of funds. and challenges them to look for other models of funding. You know, not just asking the people they know for money, but figuring out how to go beyond it. But I'd say that's the number one challenge. You know, there's no challenge in how to spend it. You know, people always figure there's lots of good ways to spend it. And,
True.
you know, raising the money, having a sustainable, responsible budget. Those are the challenges.
Yeah. What resources are included in this book to help a nonprofit manager?
So it's the tools that, you know, so I talk about what you know, you need to think like an entrepreneur, and I give some examples and I give some specific guidance as to ways that you can approach your problems and your ambitions by specific, really thought processes, cognitive tools, structured problem solving that you can use to come up with ideas, then how to evaluate them, and you know, then how to create financial models for them. So the financial models are in the book. They're also available for download in Excel format or any other format from a website. So people who buy the book get the website. You know, there's a QR code in the front, and they can go to the website and they can unlock all these tools, and they can have them for free. Give them models of business plans for nonprofits so they can see examples of good plans done for nonprofits. And when they see them, they go, I could do that. I see that. You know, it's not that there wasn't a lot of work involved, but it's not something that I couldn't do. So they get those tools, and I'm going to put on the website interviews with people with a lot of nonprofit experience to talk about what their challenges have been, how they've solved their problems, how they've built their organizations. So I think it's sort of a suite of tools so that they can go from I want to start to here's my plan, or I need to reevaluate my nonprofit and here's my plan for going forward.
Okay, that's great. What are some of the strategies that you can recommend to someone who's looking to develop a good business plan?
Yeah, I think there's so much wisdom out there in the world um, ab- ab- that you can access. Um, so if you know you want to start a program that um, you know you have something that you feel needs to be done. So you want to expose primary school children to business careers. You know, just to understand this is an option for them, right? So you're 12 years old, even 11 years old. It's like when you think about what you want to do, when you're not thinking about being a baseball player, you know, maybe I want to work in business when I grow up. You should know that's an option. So if suppose you wanted to start that as a nonprofit, you know, to go into schools and to talk about um, business careers, what do people do in business careers? So you might not know how to start, and I don't know how to start. I'm sitting here talking about it. I wouldn't know how I would want to start that. But there are people who have thought about this. There are people who have done related things. There are people who have had experience. Pardon me. Go out and interview them, find them, talk to them, talk to business teachers in high school and say, what would have helped your students 5 years ago to get oriented to this? What do you think you can do to show younger students the value of business? And, you know, I mean, I think getting them out of school, showing them what a business is, you know, how does a bakery work? how does a deli work, having them talk to the owner, having these people come into class. Maybe these would be good, I mean, they might make sense, and so then you can develop a plan around that. These people who you can speak to, educators, business people who have visited classes, parents, get ideas from them and get their thoughts and try out various ideas by speaking to people. I think that's just a great way to start. And it also gets you a little bit beyond your own thinking. So, it's like if I'm going to start something, I have an idea. That's great. I have an idea. But, maybe there's a better idea. Maybe there's a way to fiddle with it to make it better. So use the tools in the book to come up with variants of that, to come up with ways that it might be better, to do the interviews and to learn what's out there. So anyway, that's sort of my, I'd say number one advice, get out there, get out of your head, get out into the world, talk to people, try it out. A lot of people who start businesses, a lot of people start nonprofits, they're afraid that when they tell somebody their idea, that this person's going to, drop everything they do in life and they're going to run out and they're going to start this business. This like almost never happens. And in, all my years of teaching, I've actually never met a student who said, oh, I told somebody this and they did it. Never heard. I'm not saying it never happens. It hardly ever happens. So open about sharing your idea and get feedback on
it. Okay. I see that you've included the Lumos textbook technology. Can you please tell us about what that means in the context of your new book?
Yeah, so Lumos has been and Lumos is a business that grew out of a class of mine that the founder Mukunda Krishnaswamy was in. So Mukunda and Lumos have built a very smart suite of tools for online learning and for transmitting knowledge through the internet. And this also required a lot of thought, a lot of trial and error, or a lot of experimentation. And so by connecting with them, I get the benefit of all of those tools and all of that, revision to have a quality suite of products that I can use to supplement the book. So yeah, and it's of course, a pleasure for me to see what's happened to Lumos since, Mukunda had the first idea for it.
Nice. Would you be updating the resources and the content in the book?
Yes. So I think this is, that's a good question. So, the world is always changing. We don't have to look too far today to see how the world is always changing. And so one of the things that having an online suite of tools does is it allows for an easy update. Updating a book is a more complicated process. Updating a website, adding things to it, taking out-of-date things away from it, replacing them with new tools is much easier to do, can be done on a continual basis. So it's, I think, an important part of any kind of, any kind of knowledge transfer today has to go beyond just the physical book.
That's very true. What are some of the key benefits of your book?
I think the key benefit of the book is that a person who reads it, uses the tools in it, finishes the process, leaves the process with a real specific game plan. That they can stop thinking about great things in the future and start thinking about next steps. What's my next step to get where I want to go? And the process of moving forward for any organization, for any nonprofit, for any business is taking small steps. Um, Giant businesses started with small steps. I'm very familiar with the startup of Amazon. In fact, Jeff Bezos wrote the forward to the first Bankable Business Plans book I did. And, he had big ideas, and that's why he called the company Amazon, because Amazon's the biggest river in the world. And, but he started selling books, from his garage, setting up a website and then getting orders, going and getting the books from the warehouse, bringing them back to his garage, wrapping them and delivering them to the post office by 5 o'clock. That was a tiny step, and then from there, he hired somebody else, and then he rented an office, and then, and then the rest of it is history. But it starts with small steps. Apple started with the small step of two guys with the help of their fathers, building a little computer. And that's, and I think that's true for nonprofits. I think that's true for almost every business. And this book is reality based. So it's, yes, you have great ambitions. Let's get there. How are we going to do it? Step by step. Let's enumerate the steps. Let's see why they make sense. And let's start that process. Eventually, very soon, your business plan will be revised. I guarantee it. That always happens. You're going to learn things as you begin to do it. You're going to make connections. You're going to have ideas about connecting with other organizations and other people. You're going to learn. And as you learn, you're going to revise your plan. And the book provides you with the tools to revise your plan as you go along. And that's good. Jeff Bezos never thought that he would have to keep books in inventory. Well, that turned out to be wrong. Now he's, the warehouse system for Amazon is the largest warehouse system in the world. And he does the process of storing and shipping for other people. He thought other people would do that for him when he started. Now he does it for them. So anyway, things work out differently. You got to roll with the punches.
That's right. If you had to pick one advice for a nonprofit in the backdrop of COVID-19, what would that be?
Whoa, this is really a tough question. I would say start small. It's going to be more difficult raising money now than it's been in a long time. Get started, figure out the smallest step to sustainability that you can take to get started. Things will improve, the world will improve, I don't doubt that. But how long it takes, who knows? And so if you have big plans and it requires great successes from the beginning, going to be very tough to do. So I would say figure out what's the shortest path to sustainability. In other words, your revenue and expenses are balancing. You're not going to have sleepless nights about running out of money right away. What can I do to get my organization going, doing the things I wanted to do in a way that I know that in a year or two, it'll still be here.
That is so important. Do you have some examples of nonprofits that have used the planning processes such as the ones you cover in your book to create powerful and long-term change?
That's a question. I do. but I'm not quite comfortable speaking about them without their permission.
That's
Uh,
okay.
yeah, so I think that's a question we should come back to at some later point.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
actually, that would be um, those would be good organizations to try to bring the founders in
Nice.
to talk about it on the website.
That would
Yeah.
be really great.
Yeah. Okay.
Something we can look forward to. Well,
Okay.
Professor Rogoff's new book is available on all leading bookstores, including Amazon. Thank you so much, Professor. Wish you all the best and luck.